What's up, guys? Shane Watson from SilverLadder.com. It's been a long time since I've recorded a video, and I now have the capability to do it again. So I thought I would share a story with you that popped in my head the other day. It's not new. It's actually very old, but I haven't thought of it in a long time. Chances are you haven't heard it either. In the mid-90s, I traveled to Europe for 2 weeks. I had the opportunity in high school to travel to Spain for a week and France for a week. And it was a really cool opportunity. Got to see Père Lachaise Cemetery, Jim Morrison's grave, the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, the Alhambra in Spain, all kinds of cool stuff. But anyway, this story is not about all the fascinating things we got to see. It's about a conversation that I had, a conversation I attempted to have in Spanish with our bus driver. We began the trip in Spain. And the week that we were in Spain, we were taken through the country by a bus driver who was from Spain. And I spent a fair amount of the beginning of the trip riding in the back of the bus, and I was asked by the chaperones to move to the front of the bus. I don't know why. For some reason, they thought maybe I was getting into trouble in the back of the bus. No clue why they would think something like that. But anyway, they asked me to start hanging out toward the front of the bus, and I didn't necessarily want to be up there, but it was like, okay, they told me pretty much I had to be. So I decided to make the best of it. And before we had left for the trip, some people here in the States had told me that Americans had a pretty bad reputation in Europe because Americans would come over and act really rude and act very entitled and just basically make a mess over there. And so anyway, I was curious to find out what our bus driver in Spain thought of Americans. I wanted to find out straight from somebody that lived there, obviously had dealt with a lot of tourists, he drove a tour bus, and wanted to find out if he liked Americans, wanted to find out if he had dealt with rude people or if he had had a better experience. So anyway, you know, we had nothing but time to kill over a long stretch of road, so I moved up even closer to the front of the bus and started talking to him in what Spanish I had learned thus far in high school in the couple years of Spanish that I had taken up to that point. And, you know, just started basically making small talk with him, introduced myself to him, and really started with the pretty rudimentary Spanish that I knew. And I was trying to think, you know, where can I take this conversation? I was basically just killing time. And then I remembered that conversation that I'd had with family members back here in the States about rude Americans. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to ask him what he thinks of Americans. And so I asked him what I thought was, do you like Americans? But anyway, after I finished the question, right after the words left my mouth, he immediately let go of the steering wheel and turned around and was like, no, 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 to me like this, like just animated. He literally let go of the steering wheel and was like, "Go, no, 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 no," and then finally turned back around and grabbed the steering wheel, but he keeps looking back over his shoulder at me, and he's like, no, 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 like that. And I'm like, oh man, this guy really boy, he's had an awful experience with Americans. I'm like, who are the people that came over here and ruined our reputation with this guy? Well, anyway, one of the chaperones who went with us was somebody that spoke very fluent Spanish. And she was across the aisle from me and laughing, just tears streaming down her face, and just like couldn't even catch her breath. And I'm like, wow, she finds it really funny that this guy hates Americans, or this poor guy has dealt with really rude Americans. I don't understand why that's so amusing, but okay. And so anyway, she finally is able to catch her breath, and she says to me, what do you think you asked him? And I said, I asked him if he likes Americans. Some family members of mine had told me before I went on this trip, you know, to really watch my P's and Q's, watch my manners, be a good ambassador, because a lot of Americans come over and they're obnoxious, and a lot of people in Europe, unfortunately, have dealt with really rude Americans, and many don't like them. So I was asking him, do you like Americans? I was just curious, do you like Americans? And the chaperone said, no, that's not what you asked him. Do you want to know what you asked him? And I said, yes, I'd like to know what I asked him. She said, you asked him, do you like young American boys? I left the bus driver alone for the rest of our time in Spain. I went back and return to the back of the bus, and they allowed me to. And I left him alone after that. You know, some days it just doesn't pay to get out of bed in the morning. And that's what I get for trying to use Spanish. Anyway, Shane Watson, silverladder.com. Hope you enjoyed the story.